Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. So I'll just let a few more people join and then we'll get started. So welcome to everyone. You'll be on mute throughout the presentation and your cameras will be off. But you can use the chat function or the Q&A function throughout the session if you've got any questions, and we'll pick them up at the end. Whilst everyone is joining, it would be good if you could introduce yourselves in the chat, please, so we know who we've got and what organisation you're from. And this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be shared after with you, so you can watch it again if you want to, or you can share it with colleagues. So I'll be running the session today, and we've got Lindsay from Teaching Staff Trust with us, and Ollie, who's like my tech support and the slide manager. We were supposed to be joined by Beth and Donald from ACO today, but unfortunately they both got COVID. But I have been sent what they were going to share, so I will run through that and you'll just have to pretend I'm from ACO when I do that. And I did think I'd maybe get like a hat or something to wear to be ACO, but I didn't. So you just got to use your imaginations. So my name is Sasha and I'm a partnerships manager with Lightning Reach, and I've been focusing on working with grant givers and advice providers since January this year. So before that, I was with the RAF Benevolent Fund for 9 years as the Welfare Services Manager for most of that time. And in that role, I used to oversee the Welfare Navigator team and the Application Coordinator team. So they took basically all of the applications and inquiries for the fund. So across my 15-year career, most of that has been in grant giving and frontline advice services. And one thing that has always stood out to me is that stigma is a huge barrier for people when they're asking for help. And particularly if you offer a face-to-face service or telephone support, it can make that particular barrier more difficult to overcome. So this webinar, Rethinking Grant Making with Limited Resources, will touch on that, but also some other challenges that beneficiaries face when accessing support and you face as grant givers. So for beneficiaries, most people put off seeking support until they've exhausted every other option. So whether that's debt advice, benefits advice, or approaching charities. So for them, it's truly a last resort. So when they finally take the step and then they're faced with having to repeat information, go over the same thing again and again for different people in the same organisation, or when they're approaching multiple organisations, some people think it's just not worth it. And then as an organisation, you see quite a drop off throughout the stages of people applying for support. And then the knock-on effect for organisations is that instead of spending time ensuring people are getting the full support you need, staff are often bogged down in admin. And a particular issue for me as a grant giver was chasing for income proofs. Most organisations need them and it can be really difficult to get them, and the format you get them in. My favourite was always like a screenshot of online banking with like 5 transactions. So you've got like 100 pages to look through just for 1 month. So when you're spending a lot of time doing things like that, it can cause frustration for both sides. And then you've also got like your own internal processes, again, like if you've got to present to committee and things like that. So all that does is limit the impact you're able to provide to your beneficiaries. So today we'll hear from our brilliant partner, Teaching Staff Trust. Lindsay will do like a case study and go over what they've been doing and their learnings. And I've got some really good sector insights from ACO and how ACO members are tackling challenges that they're seeing. So it's all about sort of everyone trying to do the most they can for beneficiaries with limited resources, reaching people who might otherwise be missed, and finding ways to expand support. And I think something that's come out when I've been preparing for this is that we are seeing that across the board, that people are having to expand their support offer. And a lot of the time that's because statutory and other services are falling short. So it'll be like a broad overview. Unfortunately, mostly me talking because Beth and Donald can't be here, but we will leave time at the end for questions. So if you've got anything you want to say throughout the presentation, just drop it in the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll pick it all up at the end. If there is like loads and loads of questions, which I'm sure there will be, then I will do like a Q&A sheet to follow up with as well, so everything will be answered. Next slide, please, Ollie. I can't see if we've moved on.
We have moved on.
So first of all, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about Lightning Reach. So some of you will have been aware of us for years, others we might be brand new, but I think where we develop at such a fast pace, it's always sort of good to have a refresher anyway. So over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've become experts in the space. So we have developed software, which is an application portal, and it is for grant giving charities to streamline processes, make it easier for people to apply for support. But it also enables other organisations to provide additional support to their residents and clients. So we work with, as well as over 25 charity partners, we've got local authorities, housing associations, and other support providers on the portal. So we've got about 2,500 schemes on the portal that people can be matched with. But where our journey really started was in the charity sector, and it's a sector I hold close to my heart. So we work closely with all of our partners and we try and understand specific needs of the organisations so we can offer a bespoke service to ensure we're helping organisations achieve their goals. So for charities, for some, this is reaching more beneficiaries. Others, it's saving staff resources or improving accessibility. So whatever the need is, we will adapt what we can offer and how we work with partners to accommodate that. So we take a multi-organisation learning approach and look at best practices across all of the different sectors we work in. And that has led to us, so we're predominantly a self-serve portal, so people can find and access support themselves. But we recognise that some people are vulnerable or they struggle with it, with digital exclusion, accessibility issues. So we've introduced a support worker function. So people from organisations are able to make applications on behalf of people as well. The portal works by triaging beneficiaries. So you get to know all of the household needs from people applying through the portal. It enables grant givers to administer grants, and you can highlight and match people to other financial support and non-financial resources. We recently introduced voucher fulfilment as well. So this really helps ensure that everyone gets the holistic support offering that they need. And also they're more likely to get sort of long-term support rather than just addressing the initial need. We use tech within the portal that helps reduce fraud as well, so that can help organisations ensure that their resources are safeguarded, and particularly when you have got limited resources, that is like a huge benefit to save resources so you can distribute them accordingly. So as I say, we are constantly developing, so there'll be further changes to the portal in the near future as well. So it's always worth coming to regular webinars with us so you can learn what's new. Next slide, please, Ollie. So a large area of growth for us recently has been with utility partners, and this has opened up a lot of new schemes and advice and support in the area. So it's a really big need currently and will likely continue to grow the need for this type of support over the coming winter months. So on the previous slide that it just said about our current user base. So we've got more than 20,000 registered users on the portal. And now we've been going for a few years, we're seeing like sort of a pattern of when people use the portal to find support. And for us, the month of November is when it peaks. and that sort of matches in with cost of living crisis, people in fuel poverty, particularly over winter months. So it would be great to know if you see a similar sort of uptake of requests in November, or likewise, if you see it at different times of the year, and that might be because it matches your sort of demographic of beneficiaries. So if you could, and if you want to, please share that in the chat now. So not only is all of this information a great benefit for the users of Lightning Reach, it also helps partners offer a more holistic support, and it means you don't have to increase your spend or your resources as well. Next one, please, Ollie. So this is now where I'm pretending to be ACO. So as part of the ongoing development of Lightning Reach, we're a member of ACO, the Association for Charitable Organisations, and we work closely with them. So ACO they regularly reach out to all of their members, get feedback and things as well. And I know we've got quite a few ACO members on the chat. So again, if you want to participate, you could add in the chat function how your membership with ACO has helped you or your organisation shape your grant giving. So I just want to give a bit of an overview of ACO's membership and the sector. So they are a membership body comprising of over 115 charities, and charities that provide financial and wellbeing support to individuals in crisis. The network is quite broad, so there are like occupational charities, a lot of armed forces, benevolent funds, medical charities, and charities that support people according to their demographic. So like they support women, elderly people, children, for example. So it's a really good range of organisations that are currently members. And in 2023 to 2024, all of the member charities employed over 7,000 staff and delivered over 167 million in grants to individuals. So you can see it covers quite a good range of the sector. So ACO members have highlighted that the grant making landscape is under sustained pressure. So a lot of organisations are seeing increased demand from beneficiaries. When they are presenting, beneficiaries often have more complex needs. So that can mean that it takes more time to support people, and you need more of a sort of human aspect to it to provide the appropriate level of support for those people. And then this in turn stretches resources. So from the beneficiary point of view, a lot of people are now facing multiple challenges. So they've got cost of living pressures, health and wellbeing issues, and many more. And I'll go into what's increasing the drive and demand shortly. So funders and grant makers, as a result of this, are simultaneously having to deal with limited resources, reduced investment income, and rising operating costs. But despite this, ACO members have shown that there's like a genuine desire to be as innovative as possible, and for charities and funders to adapt. So there's been a growing emphasis amongst members on collaboration, flexibility, and trust-based approaches. And I think it's really good when you have a membership body like ACO. So you've got lots of different organisations feeding in, but you see a lot of consistency amongst the organisations as well. So what is driving the increased demand for support? So cost of living crisis, food is increasing, energy costs are increasing, housing costs, transport costs, everything's increasing, and that's meaning a lot of people just can't afford to meet basic needs. Or if they do have the ability to afford basic needs, if something happens, like a slight change in circumstances, that can tip them over the edge into like financial insecurity. And alongside that, inflation has eroded the value of wages, pensions, and benefits. So debt and financial insecurity is another driver. So many households are experiencing mounting debt. Rent arrears is quite high now, and a lot of reliance on high interest credit. So then the small shocks that happen can totally derail people. So that could be like illness, job loss, or even like a broken washing machine. So something small like that is pushing people into crisis, whereas before it wouldn't necessarily have done that. There's also quite a lot of instability with employment. So a lot of people on 0 hours contracts or gig economy. So they've got income, but it's low and unpredictable. So again, it makes it difficult to sort of for them to self-sustain because they just don't know when they're going to get money in or how much it's going to be. And I think in work poverty is massive now. And I saw that over the last sort of 5 years, the increased need for people in work approaching charitable funds and foundations. Whereas before it used to be sort of like older people generally would approach charities for assistance. It's more and more prevalent that people working age are needing sort of assistance regularly now. When the switch over to universal credit started, we started seeing as well the impact of that. So people were used to getting regular income weekly, but then being forced to move on to universal credit meant they were receiving their money monthly and in arrears. And that sort of brought up loads of challenges as well. And I think charities have always filled the gap that the state support doesn't adequately cover. But I think, again, with everything sort of dropping and slowing down, that has become more prevalent over the last few years. So we've got health and wellbeing challenges as well. So there's a rise in demand linked to long-term health conditions, mental health conditions, and long COVID. And then illness often leads to reduced earnings, higher living costs, and increased vulnerability. Housing and homelessness is also a huge driver for people reaching out for support. So rents are rising, there's a lack of affordable housing, and evictions are creating urgent needs for grants. And we've seen, like in the media, sort of over the last year, the increase in use of temporary accommodation. And then when people are put into temporary accommodation, that increases all of their other costs because they can't cook regular meals, for example. So they're having to rely on takeaways. So everything sort of compounds the issue and it's all linked in. So I think that sort of talks to cases being more complex as well, because you can't just sort of fix one thing and it will sort everything out. You've got someone who needs help getting back into work, someone who needs to set up a new home, someone who's got children, and then someone who, like, for example, needs to be off of work for whatever. And we saw actually over the summer holidays, that can be quite a difficult time for a lot of people because they lose the childcare that they normally have when kids are at school. But on a more sort of positive note, awareness and accessibility, more people know about benevolent funds and charitable support now, and a lot of that is through digital referrals and people having more frontline partners. So it means applications are increasing. So Donald and Beth asked basically what members have been seeing and what their sort of particular issues and challenges are currently. And I've got 5 points to cover for that, and then we'll look at the solutions that ACO members have found effective and have shared. So demand versus resource gap is a huge issue. So members are consistently reporting a sharp rise in applications and requests, while funding pots have either remained static or they've got smaller. So it's quite a challenge trying to juggle that. Burnout and capacity strain as well. So a lot of charities and benevolent funds are concerned about their staff and volunteer resilience and the sustainability of delivering support. So staff and volunteers are being asked to do more and more with less and less. So that can have a huge impact on sort of the output of the charity and a knock-on effect on beneficiaries and their experience and how they're supported. A lot of members have been highlighting the need for flexibility. So a lot, particularly older benevolent funds, have rigid eligibility criteria or application processes. And then that increases the time frame it takes for people to get support. And it can actually make it more difficult and less inclusive than it should. So a lot of organisations are looking at trying to cut out as much of the unnecessary stuff as they can to make processes more human and less bureaucratic. And some charities are even adopting a light touch approach. So either limited or no formal applications for some programmes, but then they need to balance that with the increased risk of fraud. If they're asking for less information, then potentially more fraudulent cases can get through. Duplication and fragmentation is another area that causes concern and issues for members. So I think I saw this particularly in the military sector. So like the army, they have so many different pots of funding, and it's really difficult to find out who's the best one to go to and how to approach them. So when you've got multiple small funds, you sometimes end up tackling the same issue separately rather than pooling your knowledge and resources. So that can lead to duplication and crossover in eligibility. So you've got someone who is potentially eligible for like 3 benevolent funds, but if they all work together, they could make the same impact, but also sort of reduce and streamline down their resourcing. So it would mean that they've got more resources to help more people. There's also been a big drive for evidence and impact. And that is difficult because people are seeing an increase in demand, but they're asking to report on more and more and like give impact outcomes. So again, organisations are having to balance that, like the day-to-day job and then the evidence, which can lead to increased funding. So it's difficult to sort of find the right balance to be able to meet the needs of beneficiaries, but also to try and get sort of as much money coming into the organisation as possible. So some of the solutions that ACO members have found effective is simplifying processes. So by streamlining applications and reporting requirements, they can cut out a lot of admin and just sort of make what they're already doing and getting work sort of automatically for them. And Beth and Donald have given the example of Lightning Reach. I didn't add that in, that was their example. So some organisations are using us to adopt like a single form and a streamlined process, and you automatically get all the reporting, but there are other sort of ways to do it as well. Partnerships and collaboration. So a lot of funds are starting to co-fund things, share intelligence, to try and reduce duplication and widen the reach. The Eton Fund, for example, provide organisational grants to Covell, so that more effectively supports the nursing population. So they've recognised that they're a tiny little fund, they can't fund individuals and cope with that themselves. So they're doing block funding to other organisations to make the money go further. A lot are also targeting prevention. So when people have got limited resources, they're looking at doing sort of early intervention projects, which are cheaper for them to fund, but the hope is that it prevents crisis that costs more in the long term in the future. So that I thought that was really interesting as well, that a lot of organisations are starting to go down that route. Another thing is use of technology, so light touch digital systems that make it easier for applicants and reduce the admin burden. And I know there's been a lot of talk about AI at the moment and sort of fears of AI replacing jobs and things like that and taking away the human aspect. But I think more and more people are realising that if you use technology within your current roles, you can just use it to help what you're doing and facilitate and make your life easier rather than taking that sort of human approach away. And then the final thing that ACO members have highlighted as effective solutions is peer learning. So webinars like this where people can share models, what works. ACO run quite a few special interest groups and circle community hubs as well, so members can explore and potentially adopt solutions quicker. Yeah, so that I think that's a really like sort of great approach, just to share what's been working for you and what hasn't worked for you as well, just so people have got more idea of what's going on across the sector. Next slide, please, Ollie. So I'm back to being Sasha now, not ACO. So I was at the ACO conference and awards on Thursday last week. Lindsay was there as well, and I know a few people on the call were also there. And I just wanted to highlight some of what I got from that day, because a lot of the sessions as part of that day touched on what we're discussing. And I think the things that stood out to me the most were that charities vary a lot. So some have got huge reserves, some have got no reserves. Some are set up as membership associations, some are linked to occupations, and the way they are set up to support beneficiaries varies hugely. The potential sizes of beneficiary pools, so like grocery aid were there, and their beneficiary pool is in the millions. The number of staff as well. So you've got some really tiny sort of one-man band charities, and then you've got others with hundreds of members of staff. And the types of projects or support that they offer varies hugely depending on what type of charity they are. But no matter how different charities are, stigma is a barrier for people accessing support, and that's across the board. And charities, they all want to do the best they can for their beneficiaries. So although you've got a lot of variation, at the core of it, it is all about the beneficiaries and making the most of what you've got to be able to support them in the best way. So another thing that sort of came up was that collaboration is key, and the ACO information has highlighted that as well. And I think it's particularly important when you do have limited resources. So a lot of organisations, particularly sort of mid and bigger charities, took a sort of one-stop shop approach. So they wanted to be able to do everything for everyone, but that's necessarily what's best for the beneficiary and their journey for support. So I think being confident in saying we don't do that, but we know who does, is another sort of great way to work and make the most of your resources. I'd be interested to know how you collaborate at the moment within your different charity sectors, and if you can think of any ways you might be able to improve on that. So if you would like to contribute to that, please just pop it in the chat or the Q&A section. And then the final thing that I got from that day was that charities are again trying to introduce preventative measures. So rather than simply being reactive and meeting the initial presenting need, they are trying to take a holistic approach. And I think that word has been used a lot in the charity sector, but more as just sort of like, oh, we take a holistic approach when we're helping beneficiaries. But I think now we're moving into actually sort of doing it more, and recognising that there might be other charities out there who can provide support, and it's just about sort of increasing awareness and your understanding as a grant giver to make sure you know the information, not necessarily being able to do everything yourself, but being aware of everything that is out there that can support your beneficiaries. Next one, please, Ollie. So one of the sessions at the conference, the chair asked all of the speakers to finish with a call to action, and I thought all of them were really good. So I've stolen that as well to incorporate into this, because I think it was good. They were all really different, but all really sort of hit home with me. So the director at the solicitors charity, her call to action was don't be afraid to test. And I think this is coming up more and more now. You need to be sort of innovative. You need to look at new initiatives, new technology and different processes. You need to constantly sort of evolve so you can keep up with demand and make the most of the resources you've got. And then the director at Blesma, his call to action was put those you're supporting at the heart of change. So from that, I took it to mean like, don't just make changes for change's sake. So it's quite easy for especially people higher up in charities to have a particular view, and that can differ wildly from frontline service providers who actually deal with beneficiaries on a day-to-day basis. So it's really important to understand what your beneficiaries want and need, because that can vary as well amongst different demographics and different charity types. My favourite was the director from the Bank Workers Charity. So she said to practice what you preach. And that is all about sort of supporting your staff and listening to them. So the better you look after your staff, the better they'll support your beneficiaries. And that has always been a thing that I've sort of tried to live by, especially as a manager as well. When you've got frontline staff, they're dealing with more and more difficult situations, more complex situations. And it's really important to understand that if they're sort of burnt out or they're just overworked, then it means they're not going to be able to provide the best support to the beneficiaries. And then the director at Grocery Aid, her call to action was to embrace new ways of reaching communities. And I think that's something I've really noticed since working at Lightning Reach, how you can have so many sort of pockets of people that you're missing that could be potentially eligible for your support. And often they are the ones who are most in need of support who aren't aware of you. So no matter how good you are as an organisation at reaching out, you'll always have those underserved demographics. And if you always sort of do a radio ad as your reaching out campaign, you're only ever going to get a particular group of people. So I think it's good to like diversify. So start using social media, for example. And Lindsay will talk a bit more about that. So I'm going to ask you to contribute again. And I don't know if anyone has actually been contributing because I can't see the chat and the Q&A function, but I'm just going to assume there's loads in there. So if I asked you what your call to action would be, what would you say? If you can add that in, I'd appreciate that, please. And then we can move on to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we've got Lindsay here. So Teaching Staff Trust is one of our award-winning partners, and Lindsay is going to give an overview of their journey over the last few years and the impact this has had for them as an organisation and their growing pool of beneficiaries.
Thank you, Sasha, and well done for being Beth as well as yourself. That was really good. Hello, everyone. Really happy to be here. I thought I'd just kick off by giving you a bit of context about TST. So we are a staff team of two, myself and our grants officer, Kerry, who's also on the call. And we have 8 trustees who are very active and supportive. We're giving £50,000 a month to beneficiaries, and that's supporting around 500 individuals who work in education a year. The rising demand and complex need that Sasha and ACO have mentioned has seen TST's grant making nearly double since 2020. So it's been a rapid increase in demand and a rapid response. And I think Lightning Reach has been a really key part of enabling us to respond to that need. Operational costs have also grown, but it's a strategic decision to keep them as low as reasonably possible so that we can direct the greatest budget to our beneficiaries. So we need to work really smartly and efficiently. TST collaborated with Lightning Reach at an early stage. My predecessor, Judith Smith, who I'm sure is known to many of you, saw an opportunity to reach more people who wouldn't necessarily have heard about TST. You know, we're not a well-known charity. So she was instrumental in getting TST involved with Lightning Reach and developing the application process and, you know, making it work for us. And when TST won Small Charity of the Year award at the ASO conference last year, she said that partnering with Lightning Reach was a defining moment for the charity. And I agree. I just don't think we'd be reaching the number of people we are without the platform. So what have I learned about grant making with limited resources in my 8 months in this role? Excuse me. There's 3 key things. We need to focus on our priorities, we need to streamline processes, and we need to maximise partner support and collaboration, which are all things I've heard Sasha and ACO say just now. So I'm going to just touch on 3 of our priorities. Our trustees really pride themselves on the quick response and quick decisions that TST can give people who apply to us for help. And using Lightning Reach for our online applications mean we can easily see where applications are in the process. We can see how long people are waiting. You know, we can catch up and make sure people are responded to. It helps us to focus on the grant making side, because we only give grants, we're not welfare workers, but we can focus on the grants knowing that Lightning Reach will help people get other support either from other organisations or by signposting, by doing the benefits check. Lightning also enables us to send vouchers if someone's in crisis, so we'll be reviewing the application, we can see they can't feed their children, it's Friday, they're going to miss our deadline for review, so we can send them a voucher, staying all in one system, which just makes things more efficient and better for the beneficiary. Another priority is our desire to be there for all education workforce personnel. It's not just teachers. We need to be there for teaching assistants, for the catering staff, the maintenance people, the administrators. And, if we could get a poster into every school staff room, we still wouldn't reach everyone. We also support early years educators in the nurseries and playgroups, and also retired people. So being part of Lightning Reach means we reach many more people than we would without them. And 67% of our applications are coming directly through Lightning now, with the other percentage coming via our website or via a known contact. So that's 60% of our applications coming from people who've not necessarily heard of TST. I was interested in what Sasha, you were saying about stigma and how people are unlikely to approach a charity, or it's a real last resort. I also feel that Lightning seems like quite an empowering way to seek support. It's self-service, you're helping yourself and you're finding resources that you probably didn't know about. So I think it's another way to encourage people to seek support. So it's a very professional platform and you can do it on your phone, and it's a very intuitive user journey. If I could move on to the next slide, please, Ollie. So this just gives a bit of an overview of our partnership with Lightning Reach. And yeah, sorry, I meant to skip onto this slide earlier, which is why I've now lost my place. Could we go to the next slide, please, and see a case study which demonstrates this amazing reach that we get with Lightning. So Emma probably never heard of TST. She saw a Facebook post from her local council. She clicked through to Lightning, she created her profile. She was a former nursery teacher, so she was eligible to apply for a grant from TST. And really quite quickly, she received a grant for £1,500 to help pay rent, energy bills and groceries. I think this is a really good example of, it's not just Lightning Reach doing their promotion and marketing, it's all the other partners in the group. So the city council, the housing associations, the utility companies. It really it's great to have strength in numbers and have the combined reach. In terms of streamlining processes, Lightning Reach has been key for us because we now use them 100% for our online applications. We're able to customize and evolve our application process to improve the quality of applications that we receive. A big issue, I'm sure, for many of us is people not submitting complete information, and there's a lot of back and forward to get everything so that you can assess it properly. We're making constant tweaks to our part of Lightning Reach so that people are encouraged to upload the right documents and improve that process. We've added in an eligibility checker screen We're using the ID check and open banking to save time and give reassurance against fraud. And we've just started using custom stages to improve our back-end assessment. So Kerry and I can more easily see whose employment has been evidenced, what stage the application is at. And the reporting dashboard is excellent. It gives far more stats than we could collect on our own in our spreadsheets. And we are pushing Lightning Reach to help us more. There are other things that we would like to see evolve in the product. So any other partners out there, I hope you're doing the same. And finally, touching on maximising partner support and collaboration, I was at the ACO conference last week, as Sasha said, and it's just so useful to meet and talk to your peers. And so many people are looking at their eligibility criteria and their processes and their strategies. So being able to share, it's just so valuable. I try and attend the ACO Small Charity Forum, the Chief Executives Forum, and I try and use circles whenever I can to ask for help and respond to people. Because I think, like someone else in the chat said, I'm not into reinventing the wheel. We've got so much experience across such a broad range of charities. It's great to be able to learn from others. As a small charity, it's also great to hear what the big charities are doing, and we saw inspiring presentations on branding and impacts at the ACO conference. Beyond our means to do some of those projects, but there's always something you can take from what others are doing and be inspired by them. So Kerry and I are always happy to catch up and join meetings with other organisations, so please reach out to us if you'd like to do that. Then just coming back to Lightning Reach, for us it's not just an application portal, it's an essential partner. It allows us to focus on what we do and, like I say, for beneficiaries to reach other sources of support. We have reassurance about data security and GDPR because that's all being handled by the tech experts. We know the user journey is optimized and mobile responsive. It's not going to, you're not going to get stuck on your phone when you're trying to do it. And we benefit from Lightning Reach's comms, marketing and SEO strategy, reaching people who would never heard of or find TST by themselves. So yeah, I feel like I've raced through that, but I'm very happy to take questions from people and, like I say, to catch up outside this forum as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was really, really useful. And I think you are sort of our best partner case study. It was the £1 million worth of support that you were able to provide over a few years with just such a small team. It's brilliant. Yeah, but I always worry about you running out of money. Now we've increased visibility so much, so hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah, that's a chat for another occasion, I think.
Yeah. Can you move on to the next slide, please, Ollie? Thank you. So for me, for this session, the key takeaways I think have been that collaboration is key, and I feel like I've said that about 20 times, but it is just like invaluable, sharing best practices and challenges. So join working groups, form new partnerships, reach out to colleagues across the sector because you can always learn something new. The second thing is to not be afraid to try new ways of working. So whether that's getting rid of your application forms as they currently are, starting to use social media or trying out new tech, just give it a try and see what the impact is with it. And then the final thing is that working in the sector is really hard. Like, it can be really difficult, it can be draining, but it's also so rewarding. So yeah, keep at it and try and sort of improve things to make it work better for you. So again, the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is share your key takeaways from the session in the chat or the Q&A. And then we can look at answering some of them now. We've got about 15 minutes left, so I feel like we gave you quite a lot of information there. But thank you, Lindsay, for sharing your insights. It's really useful. And Ollie, thank you for your technical support. And as I said, any questions we can't cover, I'll do like a Q&A. So if there's anything ACO specific, I'll hand it over to Donald and Beth as well. So now let's see what questions we've got. Okay, so there's one for you, Lindsay, from Ian at Blesma. Have you seen an increase in returning applicants due to the easier application process?
So was that returning applicants?
Yeah.
So our policy is one and done. So when we award a grant, we do say that we only usually accept one application from people. We do have some discretion, but having that rule prevents, a large amount of returning applicants.
Okay. Just scrolling through. Sorry, I shouldn't have asked you to contribute so much. It's quite a lot to go through. Ollie, have you seen any that stand out?
Someone asked if we see an uptake in demand at the start before the new school term starts.
I mean, I can respond in terms of we've definitely seen a really busy September. I don't have stats to hand, Nick, but we have seen a lot of people asking for help with getting the kids back to school. So I'm sure it's not just you.
Yeah, I will. I'll have a look at the breakdown of stats and see how it correlates to sort of like different events throughout the year, and I'll share that with everyone with what we've been seeing at Lightning Reach over the last couple of years.
And just if I may pick up on Peter's question, are there any charities that on here that have adopted a light touch approach to their application process? Something we're interested in doing. We'd like to chat to someone who's already done this and the trade-offs. I'd also be interested in that. I think that Lightning makes the application process much more efficient for the user, and hopefully it relieves some of our admin stress. But the one thing we don't scrimp on is assessment time, and checking the documents, making sure that we've got a real person with real problems and in financial need. But obviously I suspect we're all looking for ways to lighten that load. So I'd echo Peter's call. If anybody else is doing things to make it a bit more light touch, then we'd love to talk about it.
Mm. So David's call to action, getting our service out into the community by increasing our reach to isolated communities, minority groups, and those digitally excluded. So I think that's a big call to action, but I think that is something a lot of the sector are doing. And I think you sort of see patterns across the charity sector as well. So like everyone started introducing wellbeing support, and then it was sort of all around ensuring people get debt and budgeting advice. And I think you see like a pattern with that. And I think at the moment, a lot of that is around sort of making sure you're visible to as many people as possible. So that, again, that's maybe something for the future, a specific focus for us to get together and discuss that. But it's really interesting how different people use different things and how it can vary according to the beneficiary that you're looking after. And I know there was quite a lot of discussion at the ACO conference last week with that as well. So I think unless anyone has seen any other particular questions that we should answer today, I think that is us and we can wrap it up and everyone can have 10 minutes back. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining. I was going to say it'd be nice to see you, but I haven't seen anyone apart from Lindsay and Ollie. But yeah, thanks for joining, and keep an eye on new events that we post on the website. So we're trying to do more webinars now as well. And I would recommend that you, if you're not already a member of ACO, you consider joining, because you do just get so many good insights and opportunities to speak to colleagues. Thank you very much, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.